Hello, we're back for another little Max for Life tutorial where we're gonna have a look under a very well-known effect called Disperser by Kilohertz. Disperser is basically an array of multiple all-pass filters in series, which have the effect to smear the transients of your sound to get those kind of lasery sounds, from psytrance bass lines or stuff like that. So at first we're going to drag an instance of Disperser in our max patch to see the parameters we have to deal with. As you can see, there's a mount parameter from 0 to 32, which are the number of all-pass filters stacked in series. Then we have the frequency value, which is the cutoff frequency of these filters. And then there is the pinch value, which is just a cooler name for the Q factor of these filters. And then you can see there's another little parameter called please ignore with lol or what. This is just kilohertz being ridiculously funny, and we gonna do as told and just ignore this parameter. Now we're gonna rebuild this in our max patch. And we do that with a biquad filter, which we categorize as an all-pass filter with our filter coefficient object. Because we only need all-pass filters, we can hard-code the filter type, and then we can connect our in and outlets of the filter coefficient and biquad objects like this. To see what an all-pass filter is actually doing to our signal, we open up an instance of the Bertham EQ curve analyzer and connect it to the in and output of our biquad object. And then we need to define some inputs for our parameters. So we create a live.dial object, and by hovering on the left side you can open up the prototypes, and there is already a frequency preset we can utilize for that. Then we duplicate that, and then there's also a Q preset, which is basically our pinch parameter. Then we just set an example value and open up our EQ curve analyzer. By looking at that, we can see that there's actually no change at our frequency response, but when we enable the phase, you can see that at the point where our cutoff frequency is, there's some kind of phase rotation going on. Then by moving around the frequency parameter, we can change where the phase rotation is happening, and the Q value will actually determine the width of our phase response there. So now we just delete our EQ curve analyzer. And this is basically our main building block for the disperser effect. Now we can duplicate this, make sure that you duplicate the biquad and the filter coefficient object. So you just can take the patch chords all together and drag them over there. This will save a lot of time. Then we repeat that process, doing it again. And the same one another time. So we now basically have 8 all-pass filters in serial. Now we can route the patch chords here for a little bit better overview. Drag this over there. And now we can also duplicate this one again. So now we have 16, 24 and 32 instances of our all-pass filter. Then we drag over the patch chords all together to the first filter coefficient object, because we only need one, because all pass filters are set to the same values. If you have a lot of these patch chords, it actually might take a second to process this kind of stuff for Max, depending on the capacities of your machine you're working on. So now we connect all of these bytecode filters in serial. We can also route the patch cords here with Command-Shift-Y for a little bit better overview. This might take a sec. Then this. And our last instance. Great. Now we connected all of our 32 all-pass filters together. And now we're going to go and create the plugin and plug-out objects, which are necessary to route our signal information from Ableton in and out of our device. So we connect the left side of the plugin object to our first bytecode filter. Now there's still one thing missing, because we didn't declare the amount parameter till yet. So we're going to go and create a selector object with 33 inlets. And this will basically function as a gate, defining how many of the all-pass filters are stacked in serial. So we take the second inlet of the selector and connect it to the plugin, because this is basically a bypass of the effect. Then the first bytecode in the third inlet, the second bytecode in the fourth, and so on and so forth. This actually might take a sec, and maybe I go fast forward here in the video to save you some time. Great, now we finished all that connection stuff. And now we have to declare our amount parameter. So we go and copy one of our live dials. And under prototypes, we already find an amount preset, but this is scaled in %. So we're going to go over in the inspector and change that to 0 to 32. And we don't want %, so we change it into an integer value. Now we have to add a +1 operator connected here, and this one to the first inlet of our selector. The +1 is important because if we send a 0 to the selector object, it will basically close all of our connections, so there would be no signal passing through. So the +1 is kind of important. And because we want our effect to work in stereo, we have to copy all of this and drag it over here. Then we connect our first bytecode filter to our plugin object. As you can see, working in this patch is already a little bit slower because of all these GUI patch cords over here. So now we connect the second selector to the right inlet of the plugout. Then we also have to connect our first inlet of the selector to the +1 operator under the amount dial. And then the second inlet of the selector to the right side of our plugin object. As you can see, it won't reach over there. So I have to scroll over to the left side and change the connection in the right way here. Now it's correct. And then the last step, we have to take all of these patch cords and connect them to our first filter coefficient object. As you can see, this can take a while. Great, it worked. So we can delete the second filter coefficient object. So this is basically our finished patch. So now I think we should just have a little look at the EQ curve analyzer again. Because of space issues, I think we should just scale down our patch view here. So we have a little bit more room. Open up 2 instances of the EQ curve analyzer again. One we drag down here. As you can see, there's a little glitch in the user interface. That sometimes happens in Macs, but nothing to be worried about. And the first one will be connected to our plugin object. Now when we are opening up our EQ analyzer, as you can see, there's actually nothing in our EQ analyzer, but that's because we at first have to declare some start values for our parameters. And now when we have a look at the phase, you can see that the amount parameter determines how many phase rotations will happen. The frequency parameter shifts all of that up and down. And the Q, or later pinch parameter, squeezes it together to the cutoff point or widens it up over the whole frequency spectrum. So this is our full-on working disperser patch. Now you can just delete the EQ curve analyzer and dial in the user interface objects to your taste. You can rename the Q value to pinch like in the original, or do as you like. Add them to the presentation window, drag them around as you want them to be. And now you have a full working disperser style effect for your Max for Live collection. Some additional parameters moving could be useful here. You could use the slide, ramp, smooth, or line operators for that. Because if you modulate the parameters in a very fast way, there could occur some clicks and pops here and there. But covering all of these would exceed the time limits of this tutorial and might be topic for some later videos. As always, I hope the tutorial was helpful for you. And if you don't want to spend such a big amount of time on patching your own device, you can find a full-on working version of this effect in my Gumroad shop. There it's called Dispersion. You can also do little donations over there to support my work on my tutorials and my other Max for Live devices I do. I would be very thankful for that. And if you have any further questions regarding Max for Live and stuff, feel free to comment or reach out via my social media. And I try to answer as fast and best as I could. And till then, I see you in the next tutorial, I guess.